welcome to the Lighten Up podcast with Lauren Polly, your invitation for living on the lighter side of life. I'm Lauren Polly, and I'm delighted you have chosen to join me today for episode 236, Guiding Light. Today, we are going to take a very practical approach to this kind of etheric conversation, hoping to bridge the gap for many of you out there. I want to talk today about how to find that which will guide you into more lightness. And not just like finding what's light for you, finding your path that way, being able to kind of tune into your own navigational system, so to speak, as you move along and redirect yourself as needed. But also this phenomenon where a lot of our attention, our awareness, our energy, day in, day out, actually feeds that which isn't light. It feeds the heavy stuff, it feeds the stress. We tend to feed the problems more than the possibilities. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well today and see what we can really uncover and unlock for you moving forward. So this conversation, like most conversations I have on the podcast or with my community, is really born from my personal stuff that's going on because let's face it, we all kind of go through ups and downs in our life. And sometimes when one thing is going on for one person, I have found that that thing is usually up for others as well. So after a while, I have stopped making the things that are up and down in my life wrong and started going, what am I aware of? And I wonder what other people are going through. So I always take those things as an invitation to then maybe look around, become more aware of others, and to see what, of course, may not be my thing or only my thing, but also the patterns that most of us fall into from time to time. This being one of them. There is an amazing quote from the Access Bars manual. If you don't know what Access Bars is, I highly suggest you check it out. It's an energy modality. You trade bars, we call it. Someone runs your bars on your head. There are different points that correspond to different aspects of your living. It's basically like a big old energetic dump. All the old stuff that's no longer serving you gets released. And also all the stuff that, again, isn't yours. They're just patterns that we pick up from society, and the people that we're surrounded around get released as well. So it's a modality that I teach and certify people in. And in the manual is just the most amazing aha quote. It says, most people throughout their life have learned to go into the heavy situations and try to bring lightness to them. When really, if they just chose what was light for them from the get-go, their life would be very different. Paraphrasing here because I don't have the book in front of me. But it's such a huge thing, and for me reading that the first time, it was such an aha. Me as a helper, as a healer, as a caregiver, somebody who's always really cared about other people, kind of more than she cared about herself. I think a lot of you can probably relate to that. But so many of us who are really wired that way have a great sense of caring and also really know that we have gifts in that arena. People who've really chosen to have people-based professions, people who've really chosen to be, again, caregivers, so either taking care of family and friends. You have the ability to really uplift others. The thing is, we've gotten involved in some very weird patterns where we think that it's our job and it's our responsibility to go into the heavy and to not just uplift from lightness, but like, let me put you on my shoulders and lift you up myself. And that usually doesn't work out too good, does it? After a while, you become very heavy. And these patterns, again, of feeding into the heaviness, feeding into the stress and the drama, and having all the interesting control tactics that come up with it start to take root. So what if instead we just took a 90-degree turn here and didn't invite yourself into those heavy situations anymore? That you actually asked before you engaged with something, is this true for me? Will this lead my life to greater? And if there is a lightness, if there's a pop of interest, a sense of possibility, I always feel like I'm kind of leaning into something, like it's drawing me to it. Those are the things that are a unique sense of lightness to you. That is a very practical way to look at a guiding light, and also a really practical way to look at how to navigate as you make twists and turns throughout your life path. What is light is right for you. Now, the caveat with this is what isn't light for you is not. It's not true for you. It's not something that's actually pulling you to be involved with it, all the heavy aspects of life. And what gets really confusing with this is a lot of things that we think should be light for us, should be right and correct for us, actually isn't. What is light for me and what fills me up is very different than what may fill you up, and vice versa. So it's a fascinating thing because a lot of people hear this tool and this conversation and go, wow, well, if I'm only choosing what's light, then I guess that's going to look like X, Y, and Z. And sometimes they end up choosing against their gifts and what they could offer the world. And when you do that, unfortunately, you're not as fulfilled. As an example for that, doing my yoga studies for years and for years, we have murtis, we call them. They're different icons from the Hindu tradition. And my murti was always green Tara. So she is one who is the healer, the helper, the caregiver. Surprise, surprise, that's who popped for me. But what's interesting about her is she's actually the murti that goes with like Mother Teresa or Gandhi, people who are, again, healers and invoke change and bring about change, but they go into the muck of the world to do it. And it was fascinating because I learned that before I learned this tool about, choosing what's light for you and following that. And for a while I made myself wrong. I was like, oh my gosh, for years and for years, I've always chosen into the heaviness. I've always gone into the problems. I've always gone into like the hospital environment where I've worked for 15 years. I talk about mental health and suicide awareness, heavy, dense topics for a lot of people. And I heard this tool about choosing lightness and I was like, well, maybe I should just be talking about like having fun and like playing. And it was such an aha because I had to stop myself and go, you know what is a heavy topic for one may not be a heavy topic for me. For me, I actually sense a lot of lightness and possibilities in the suicide prevention conversations, in the mental health conversations with my book. Even in the hospital where I've worked in the ICU for 15 plus years and now run the department, there's a lot of sense of lightness there. But again, remember, what is light for me may not be light for you. What is right for me may not be right for you. It probably isn't. And that's the interesting thing here is we have to look at that guiding light of being one of lightness, but we also have to let our unique awareness, our unique gifts, and the possibility to just choose into something. And if it doesn't work, then to possibly just choose something else. It's just an interesting thing as I was looking at this topic to present to you of, wow, for a while I did make going into the heaviness wrong, but then I had to stop myself and say, wait a second, but those things have never been heavy to me. That in a way was choosing towards lightness. Now, where I did go awry with this was choosing into relationships that made me feel like an elephant was sitting on my chest. It was constantly engaging with people who always made me feel bad about myself. It was choosing things that I know didn't support my mental health and my wellness, but I did it anyway because I was trying to care for others. It's that moment where you just bite your tongue because you don't want to hurt the other person by bringing something up that you need to express. But in the process, you're actually hurting yourself. It's those kind of patterns where not the topic necessarily, not the container that it comes in, but the energy behind it. When you choose into that which is heavy in that respect, which a lot of us do because we're trying to go in and again uplift people, but that's the uplifting by putting them on our shoulders. That's a very different thing. So perhaps over this week, why don't you just exercise and get clear for yourself? What are the things in your life that may look heavy to other people, but actually in your uniqueness is light for you? Make a list, get clear on that, and stop judging yourself because you're choosing it. And vice versa, where are you actually engaging with things that are so heavy, people that are so heavy, situations where it's just like walking through sludge? And could you possibly, instead of choosing into that, choose what's light for you? What, when you look to either side of that heavy thing, feels like a sense of relief, a sense of possibility, a sense of lightness, and a sense of play? Leaning into that will be a guiding light that draws you forward. When we get drawn into what is heavy and wanting to uplift others, heal, change, fix, what have you, take care of, we again are putting ourselves last. And a lot of times when we do that, we negate the gifts that we have. When instead you can go into what may look like a heavy situation or a container of heaviness that's actually light for you because you know the possibility there. When you can choose into that and actually inspire, that's a very different way to uplift. That's a very different way to live in your uniqueness and to lean in and actually start to harness the gifts that you came into the world with. It's a fascinating thing if I look through just my life and who I've touched along my life path. The hospital patients, absolutely. I work a lot with end of life care, all of that. My award winning book is about bipolar and having some very scary experiences mental health wise. They don't look like light, fun topics, but they've been very pleasurable to me because I've sensed the possibility in that. I know that when I engage with people through that container with lightness, I actually inspire change. And more than anything, more than even that, not even looking at what I gift the other person, being able to gift myself the ability to live uniquely, to lean into my gifts, to engage and continuously cultivate them. I mean, there's no other way I would rather live. I can't imagine how unfulfilled I would be if I didn't do that. And so it's an interesting thing to look at and to break apart a little bit more. Where are you choosing into the heaviness, trying to raise people up on your shoulders? Without a sense of lightness of possibility, those are the things to stop and to change. And where are you perhaps pulling away from what is light for you because of the judgment of the container it's in? Or where you've fallen prey to don't go into that, that's probably not going to work for you, when really you uniquely know there's something there. And leading forward what you are feeding, what behavior patterns you are feeding, what you're allowing to grow, what you're actually choosing to nurture in your life. What if those were the things that actually gave you a sense of lightness and possibility? Not feeding the problems, not feeding the upsets, not trying to fix or heal or change or lift people up by putting yourself underneath them. But what if instead, whenever your mind got activated and pulled into that pattern, you stopped and you redirected it? My favorite question I've been playing with in this vein this past week is, what would it take to feed, energetically feed and nourish everything that brings me ease and joy and glory? And with that feeding, redirecting my energy towards those things, being willing to let all of that which doesn't fall away. A lot of clarity comes with that question. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. Please reach out to me and let me know how it's going. You can reach me at lauren@laurenpoly.com. But it's an exploration that's worth undertaking. You can play with this on the broader scope, looking at the containers of relationships and jobs and professions and what's been active in your mind, what you've been feeding the mind energy with, the attention energy. And then also really looking at the energy underneath it, breaking it down a little bit more and really getting into the nuances. Where have you been pulling away from your gifts? And where have you been leading into something you thought was a gift that actually isn't? Lots to unpack with this conversation. Have an amazing week, and as always, I will chat with you next Tuesday.